FBI agent!
If it bleeds, we can kill it.
Say hello to my little friend!
Can you dig it?
So I have a very special guest here, a recent Taurus Award winner, good friend, Antal Kalik. Welcome.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
It's actually kind of an honor. I'm really proud of you, man, with your recent Taurus nominations, and just good for you.
Thanks, man. It was an awesome experience to work on that show. And
What show was it? Why don't you tell the audience you won the Taurus?
won the Taurus Award for Best High Work. Basically, that can be anything that's up in the air from, 50 feet to 1,000 feet, whatever. They have skydiving stuff sometimes, or jumping off buildings, whatever the case. Anything that brings heights into the picture can be nominated for that category. And the show was 22 Jump Street. I was doubling Channing Tatum. Thankfully for me, they had some funny, I don't know what you call it. I always want to say it was a pull from kind of 80s action movies.
Okay.
The type of action that they wrote for it.
Go big, go home?
Go big stuff, but with a comedic side to it. So it was helicopters or, funny chase sequences. And basically in 22, they were trying to make fun of all the sequels that Hollywood does.
Oh, okay.
I think they covered that pretty well.
Nice.
So anyways, they wrote this sequence with this helicopter. Channing's character jumps onto it, as does Jonah's. Pilot pulls away. Channing's been shot in the arm, so he almost falls. Jonah catches him. Pilot's trying to shake him off, and the main bad guy is riding passenger. They go through the city. We're shooting in Puerto Rico. And then over the ocean, Channing and Jonah decide to pull a grenade out of Jonah's pants and chuck it into the helicopter, the main cabin there. And then they let go. And that's where I came in.
Nice.
Did a few drops, yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. We're going to talk more about that, but I wanted to acknowledge you on that recent success. I kind of want to go back to the beginning here, you being a Michigan boy.
Midwest.
What was that like, and what were the things that you were into back in the day?
I mean, I love the Midwest. I love Michigan. The people are amazing. It's just a good blue-collar mentality about life and a lot of different things. It's kind of the way I was raised. My dad's a carpenter, cabinet builder. My mom was actually a singer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was kind of a hippie back in the day. Actually, full-blown hippie, I should say, back in the day. But, as they went on, she became more the housewife. He was the guy who went away. But, yeah, it was awesome. Grew up playing football, wrestling, playing hockey. Basically, that's what you do in Michigan. You wrestle and play hockey.
Because it's so damn cold.
Yeah. Yeah, Southern Canada.
Yeah, right. Well, no, that stuff sounds like it's paid off, because I think you had mentioned that you went out for Warrior.
Yeah.
And the only guy that beat you was a guy who was a WWE champion or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if that was the case, but J.J. Perry had mentioned it was between me and one other guy. The other guy was Kurt Angle.
Okay.
He was also an Olympic champion.
Right.
But, it's hard to compete with Kurt in a spot like that, especially for a movie like Warrior, where it was some pretty real MMA type stuff.
Sure.
But I was happy to just be in contention for it,
Absolutely. I mean, that's sort of what I like about you. You have the great attitude. Like, look, I was brought in there, because some people don't get that opportunity. And it just goes to show you what you did in Michigan is paying off. Like here, it's much more glamour and, fluff, but you needed that old school type of vigorousness.
Sometimes that helps for sure. Absolutely.
Right on. So how did you then get into stunts?
It was something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid, just growing up and watching freaking Jackie Chan movies and whoever the case. And I always thought it was just a cool job. I had no idea how to do it or what it was, or even if it was a job. I don't know, it was exciting and entertaining. And to me, when you watch something like old school Jackie Chan, Police Story or something like that from the 80s, when you see his fights and things like that put together, it's very artistically done. And it's just, to me, it's a moving piece of art. So that was always attractive, Loved it. Loved everything about it.
Do you see now the fact that you have these physical abilities with your football and hockey and wrestling, that you talk about Jackie Chan's aesthetics and this movement? Obviously, you're used to using your body as opposed to other things that you could use. Was that something you felt you could comfortably get in based on that background?
I thought that I had a good chance at it. I always was into martial arts as well. never formally trained. I call myself a high-level backyard martial artist and still do. Just the other day, I threw that out there on an audition for something. But yeah, I felt like I could maybe come in and offer something. Didn't know where that was going to go or where I was going to offer it, but something.
Well, I just want to tell the audience here that Antal really plays it low key and he's very modest. When I've worked with Antal on a few occasions, I've said to my colleagues, I refer to you as two-take Antal because it's never long. There's never more than 2 takes, and you always get it. It's always what I want. If I don't get what I want, it was actually on me. So just based on this is my thoughts, you execute. So obviously, all these years later, it's paid off. So good for you.
Thanks, man.
You mentioned Jackie Chan, and you mentioned briefly about car chase. What car stuff sort of got you going?
Man.
Is there one that stands out?
I mean, my dad's he was a big fan of Bullet.
Okay.
So we sat through that quite a few times, and he would break it down and explain to us what was happening and yada yada. I don't know, I guess I don't want to be like too cliche here, but the Point Break stuff when I was younger, that was always awesome to me. That whole movie, all the action in that whole movie was awesome.
I think you'll appreciate our opening line. We've got like Keanu saying,
"Oh yeah,
I am an FBI agent," and all this kind of stuff. You'll appreciate it. No, that's very cool. I mean, I was for the same thing for Bullet, and basically this documentary, we can't really get into it, but that's sort of where things just changed around with Kerry Lofton and Bill Hickman and all this other type of guys. But I mean, it was just a very visceral experience.
Yeah.
So now, what do? You come to Hollywood, I'm going to be a stuntman kind of thing?
I actually went kind of a funny route. There's a stunt school up in Everett, Washington that I went to. I was 18 years old, 17, 18, got in some trouble back home. I was in regular school. I was going to community college, Muskegon Community College in Michigan. There's a bunch of delinquent wrestlers that went there. I was part of that squad for a while. But I got in some trouble there, and things weren't working that well. And my parents one day pulled me out. We sat down, and they just asked me, "What do you want to do with your life?" I'm like, "I want to be a stuntman." So we were like, "Okay, how does this happen?" No idea. Okay, blah, blah, blah. We research, we look around. Hey, look at this. There's this school run by this guy, Dave Boucher. He lives in Everett. He runs this academy for 2-3 weeks, twice a year. So I was like, I'm going. Packed up my Ford Ranger at the time with whatever I had, $600 in my pocket, and drove from Michigan to Seattle and moved there. Did this course for 2-3 weeks, whatever it was. He took us kind of through a lot of basic stuff. We did high falls. We did a little bit of horse fall stuff at a ranch. We had some cars we rented. Took us out to a little skid pad. And each thing that he did, he brought in a separate instructor for. So we had a little bit of knowledge on what we were doing.
Sure.
A little bit of wire stuff, some air ramps, things like that.
So you had all the bases covered.
Kind of, in a sense. I mean, like, at least I could move to LA and say that, hey, I have done this.
Sure.
I have done this in a class setting, but I have done a 40-foot high fall into a bag, or I have ridden a wire through a whatever. That was kind of my thought process. So I did that, and then I ended up staying for the second session of the year to help with the fight stuff, because there's a whole, I guess, film fighting section that they did in this kind of academy. That was the thing I was probably best at, because I had 3 younger brothers, and we'd all constantly, whatever we would see, we would go out and emulate.
Nice.
So we were well practiced even before I even turned 15, 16-year-old. And we would go and shoot our own little fight scenes, sometimes with just a Polaroid camera.
Right on.
Yeah. Or sometimes we had a video camera.
Dude, I love hearing this, because ultimately, what you're describing is really the American dream. You're just some guy in the backyard screwing around with your brothers, and now you just win that award. I mean, that's about as basic you can get in the American dream.
Yeah.
You worked your ass off. Now, let me ask you something. After your parents gave you that talk, you went to Everett. Did you actually get in trouble after that?
Trouble how?
Just trouble. You know what trouble is. It gets to a point where parents, they focus, you need to do this. And then, you give this kid, what he wants, and all of a sudden it works itself out.
I probably stayed there a little bit longer than I should have. Other than that, everything was good. And then I moved down here, and then it took some time just to kind of figure things out. And
sure.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what an extra was. I didn't know what anything was. I didn't know anybody, so it took me a bit longer to kind of get my foot in the door down here, I guess, than some people.
Sure. And then what you do when you were sort of figuring it out and hustling, what did you do to kind of stay in shape to be ready for that opportunity?
So when I moved here, I was doing my regular kind of gym rat workouts, nothing out of the ordinary, until I finally came across a guy, Bill from Bill's Stunts.
Okay.
This was a call-in service from back in the day. I think he's passed away now, but in the early, I guess, 2000s, it was going on. These call services were really popular, I guess, in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
Before cell phones, and I kind of caught the tail end of it in my career. He was the one who really told me what to do and where to go. Hey, do this, go hustle this guy at this gym, stunt people work out here during this time at this place, and blah, blah, blah. And then, he gave me a couple of little leads, and then I would meet some other people and build on top of that. And then I was running workouts with other stunt people at gymnastics places or riding bikes or whatever it may be.
Dirt bikes.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, you brought something to the audience's attention here, and that is hustling. It's one of the only departments that I know of that guys just show up on set and it's hustle. It's part of the business.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine was saying in Atlanta that because of the studios, that the stunt coordinators were getting a little upset because they weren't being hustled because no one was being let in. Now, obviously, things have changed a little bit, but if there was 2 or 3 things you'd want to share with a young up-and-coming person, what would those 3 things be?
About hustling.
Well, I mean, it's part of the business.
Yeah.
You can be this amazing athlete, and they're out there.
Yeah.
But, there's other aspects to it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just getting in and you are trying to hustle, first rule that I always try to follow is go by yourself. Just in a hustling standpoint. I think like some guys can be put off by 2 or more people approaching them at the same time or hanging on set trying to talk to a coordinator. Kind of draws a crowd. I think if you're by yourself, you blend in a little bit better. It's a little bit easier for him to call you over or to approach you or you to approach him, whatever. That's my number 1 rule. Unless you have a really, really good friend that knows the coordinator better and yada, yada. But I just approach it the way I would going to meet anybody, I guess, for the first time, and I try to let the coordinator accept me maybe into what he's doing at that moment, not try to be too pushy with it.
But the point was just to be treated as a professional meeting.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the way I always looked at it. It was just a quick professional meeting where you go and you shake a guy's hand. You don't want to hang around too long. I always try to just be in and out as quick as I can.
Sure.
When I was doing it. Just be courteous and cool and
good to go. And what about being ready? Like, even myself, I'm prepping for a shoot and I'm like training a lot harder, but I kind of get the idea you've got to be ready for that opportunity. You can't be sitting around gaming, eating cashews,
No, definitely not. I mean, my workout schedule, and it has been for the last 10 years, pretty rigorous. You never know what the call may be and how quickly they need you to do it. I just try to have my body prepared as much as possible to do whatever is needed.
If you don't mind, and you don't have to kind of share your secrets, but is there some things that you have as a staple?
No, I mean, for me, I try to mix it up, not as much as I can, but I'll mix it up. Some days I'm into going in and bending steel and just hammering it out. Other days I'm more into the CrossFit zone, or other days I'm more in the cardio mindset. I think just having a good blend of all that is the best you can do.
And then there's also the flexibility as well.
Yeah, I've been into yoga now since 2007. I got called for a show, Red Dawn, to go and double Chris Hemsworth. His weight can fluctuate quite a bit. As you know, from seeing Thor, he was probably running around 245.
Is he really?
But I think he walks around right around 200 to 205.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, I was called, and at that time I was real big because I was putting on size for Warrior to hopefully play that part. So anyways, I was big, and I was enjoying the fact that I could lift all this weight, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome, blah, blah, blah. So I get this call. I go in to do an audition for Red Dawn. I get a call from the coordinator. Yeah, we like to use you, but can you maybe lay off the weights for a little while? Because this guy's only this much weight, and blah, blah. I go, yeah, no problem. So I started doing yoga there to cut weight. Really liked it. Now it's a regular part of my routine. I just try to keep it mixed up and
keep it exciting, keep it so your body doesn't get used to it.
Yeah.
I understand. I was still taught to people that guys are like, no, man, yoga's for girls. I'm like, oh, is that right? I've had Garrett do ballet in front of me, and it's like, this guy has no inhibitions. So if you think you're too tough for yoga, these are two of the toughest hombres that I know, guys. So just get over it and do it. You'll see some results very quickly. And myself now, as a little bit older, I just love that flexibility. You don't want to put all that weight on your joints now, and you need that speed, and flexibility is key.
It is. Plus, another thing is injury prevention.
Absolutely.
And recovery as well. If I have a tweak in whatever, knee, elbow, shoulder, there's nothing that heals it like doing some Bikram yoga.
Sure.
Plus the prevention, having that flexibility and being able to contort yourself whatever way they need you to.
Yeah, and I'm sure they've done that with you a few times.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing I want to talk with you on this was the word ego. Something I've been trying to avoid in Hollywood because I just hate that word, right? But I remember we were doing that. We had that meeting last year, and I wanted to do this action sequence. It was kind of like a little bit of a Ronin sequence, and I said, I need this, and that. And you said, I need a motorcycle guy, and you just said Groff. And it just kind of dawned on me. Now I'm sort of realizing that you get to the point, there's guys just better at you at doing different things. Mm-hmm. And I find sometimes that doesn't always happen. I met up with another big-time parkour guy, and he said, no, this guy's better than me. This guy's a world champion. He's better than me. And I thought that guy was the shit. So to me, that's just sort of, you get the idea of the ego away, and you realize you want to keep your buddy working as well. But, obviously, I've heard that from a half a dozen people now. Groff is amazing. So I talked to Groff last week, and then all of a sudden he's telling me like, oh, I've been doing cars longer than motorcycle work. And I felt like an idiot at that point because I only knew him as the motorcycle guy. What's your thoughts on that? Like, obviously you had an opinion about Groff. Are you okay with the idea that there's a guy that can do this thing better than you?
I'm very okay with that. We all come from different walks of life. That's another amazing thing about this business, the different walks that you get to meet, like ex-supercross guys or ex-drifters, or maybe they're still in it, or like Groff was a stunt motorcycle rider and used to do shows and compete and all these different things. And then you got the gymnasts, or you have the trickers now, or the martial artists, and it's just so cool that there's such a blend of all these styles and things like that. But I don't have any problem kind of passing the ball to guys that I think are better than me at certain things.
Is it also the fact that they're like just naturally gifted in that as well?
Well, it's either that or they've just been at it longer or grown up doing it or whatever the case. Certain guys are more inclined to do things better than others, I guess. Groff, for example, is just amazing with vehicles and things like that. I always try to throw his name in for different things, or whoever it may be.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, just to finish up on that little meeting conversation, it was like I was just saying, I wanted to do this little action sequence that I wanted to pitch to a certain auto manufacturer, and what it was is like, I need 3 riders, and Antal rides too, and that was the reason why I approached him, and kind of like, well, I need this, and he says, you want a guy who can ride on one wheel and shoot a machine gun? It's Groff.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, where do I go from there? That's exactly what I want. So thanks for sharing that. Yeah, let's get back to your Taurus award. You've won it. You were nominated with 2, and we'll get into Jupiter Ascending here shortly. But where do you go from here, Antal?
Oh, man, it's a good question. I don't know.
You're at the top. You're a made man, man. I kind of like when I use that reference from Goodfellas, like you're a made man.
No,
can't be whacked.
There's still a long road to hoe, but I'm happy where I'm at now.
Okay.
Some people get to a certain age, they want to immediately move into coordinating, or they want to get out of the performing for whatever reason. Some people do, some don't. I personally still love performing, still love doing the gags, and I still even like hitting the ground, for some reason. I don't know why. It's just ingrained in my head, I guess.
Well, I think playing hockey and wrestling might have something to do with it.
It's part of it, yeah. Just what it is. So for me, I'm happy where I am. I just want to continue performing and working on some cool stuff with some cool people. Very cool. And so I had mentioned Jupiter Ascending. Antal won the award for, what's the nomination? 22 Jump Street. And what was the actual category? High work. Okay, high work. So now we're going to discuss high work on Jupiter Ascending. Yes, that was a different level of high work there. Why don't you tell the audience exactly what happened there? And as a matter of fact, I remember you sending me a text, and I think it's when you were down at the LA Harbor, and it was like, whoa,
sound like this is pretty intense stuff. So why don't you tell us what happened down at the harbor first?
Okay, so basically the Wachowskis were getting ready to make this movie, Jupiter Ascending. The main character has jet boots. Basically, they're more like, I don't know, anti-gravity boots. They don't fly straight up or anything like that, like Iron Man. He basically has to generate momentum with them, or he can leap off tall things and kind of skate or surf through the air as he lowers himself in a sense. So they were thinking of what's the best way to kind of showcase that or illustrate it. I'm not sure whose idea it was, if it was Wachowski's or if it was the coordinators or...
Who was the coordinator on that, by the way?
R.A. Rondell.
Okay.
Awesome dude. Had a great time with that guy.
Nice.
So anyways, they wanted to test with a couple helicopters. One helicopter holding me and Mila's stunt double, and then a camera ship following behind with the space cam, which is that big ball they put on the front of them. So I got a call from RA and asked if I was cool to do it. I said, hell yeah. So we went down to the harbor. They had some riggers there. They rigged up some stuff and hung me under the helicopter. I think we tested a bunch of different lengths of leaders and things like that, from 40 feet to 10 feet to this and that. And we tested a drag chute or without, and then we put a snowboard on just to see kind of what it would do to the body and how it would manipulate the body in there.
Your body, like under the helicopter,
Yeah.
and what it was also look visually as well.
Right. So we tested a bunch of different things, did a bunch of laps kind of going in and out throughout buildings just to kind of give the directors a taste of what it would look like. We tried it, we had bungee cords attached to my feet because they were really into this thing about how they wanted to have the boots look like they had purchase or actually pushing off something in the air, which can be tough sometimes when you're on a wire. The best way was just these simple bungee cords on my legs. I was picked at my hips, and then the girl I was holding, she had a pick point somewhere around the middle of her back. It kind of worked, kind of looked cool, and then we went and shot it.
And then before we get in there, why don't you tell what Wachowskis did when they went around looking for the best rollerbladers in the world?
Oh, so before that even...
Oh, so that was the first thing, then they did this.
The first thing they did was they spent a good amount of money on this whole indoor rollerblading park scenario. I'm not sure, I saw a little bit of the previs from it, but basically they had a truss grid up above. They had some people on wires, and they brought in apparently 3 of the world's best rollerbladers and had them go through all these motions, all this stuff, and they were flying camera behind them and this and that, and these guys were hitting quarter pipes, half pipes with people on them, and then they were layering in explosions and things like that. I think the consensus was that in the end, it would be a little bit tough on Channing to put them in a half pipe and do these things. They came up with a different route to kind of go about it. But that was a whole test period, even before they did the stuff on the helicopter with me.
It's kind of interesting. They're just breaking down all the mechanics, the look, the flight, the visuals, and just also to enhance the story.
Yeah.
So now you have that under your belt. You do the thing down at the harbor, and now you go to Chicago and do your thing. Why don't you tell us what occurred there and what that was all about?
So yeah, that was some fun stuff. Basically, they wanted this whole chase sequence with him being chased by these alien spaceships. They wanted it all to be right at dawn. So we would get up. We did this 4 days. We get up at 2 a.m., go down to the landing zone, harness up, get ready. They lift off probably around 4 maybe, somewhere in there. And they had this kind of golden hour where the sun was just coming up and the sky was a certain color. They really wanted this whole chase to happen within that time, which is a deal in itself.
Right.
So we basically walk into the middle of downtown Chicago. I don't know how many PAs they had the streets were completely blocked for miles.
Wow.
Empty. 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, whatever it was. Me and the stunt girl, the coordinator, a couple of the riggers would walk out in the street. There was an aerial coordinator who was on walkie with the pilot. Okay, we're bringing them in, and then we just see the helicopters start to come in, through the buildings, land right in the middle of 2nd Street. We would hook up, and and off we would go. The first sequence is them getting pulled up into this spaceship like they're being tractor beamed. And once they get above the Sears Tower, the spaceship gets blown up, and they lose control and start flying through the air, and he has to go and catch her. So to me, being lifted up and being flown throughout these buildings and above them wasn't as bad as the tractor beaming, where the helicopter just had to climb straight up the side of the Sears Tower, stagnant still. And I just had to sit there and hold this girl, Mickey, who's Mila's double at the time.
Okay.
As still as we could be. And he was climbing up the side of this building, not very far from it, maybe 15 feet from it was his rotor blade. These pilots were amazing. Cliff Fleming and Craig Hoskins were their names. So they would climb up there, we'd do our thing, and then the Wachowskis were actually in the camera ship, either trailing us or opposing or whatever they wanted to do at the time. I had an earpiece on, I can kind of hear their conversation. I would just relay it to Mickey. So we go up and they would pick their shot, and here's what we're going to do. okay, ready, action. And Cliff would go into a dive. He would swing in the middle of these buildings, and
With you attached to it.
with me attached to it and Mickey attached to it. I remember after we got done one of the days, one of the riggers inside the helicopter was telling me the story about how Cliff was going to split these two buildings with us underneath. And as he's going in to approach these two buildings, one of the riggers goes, "Hey, you're not going to fly through that, are you?" And Cliff goes, "Nope, we are." Basically split these two buildings. I remember looking up thinking there wasn't more than like 5 feet on either side of his rotor blades. It was some hairy stuff. It was awesome though.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So ultimately, how high were you up?
Very tip top was somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 feet. I think the Sears Tower goes to 14 something, and then they have these towers on top of the tower, these radio towers or whatnot. I remember being up there kind of hovering around, and the wind was swirling around. It was a cool view, and I think that was the highest, and then everything else kind of got lower from there as we swung around and then went in through and started the chase.
What kind of speeds were they traveling in the helicopter? Obviously, it has to be a point to create that right effect, that motion. So when the camera grabs it, it's like, in other words, you can't be whipped. You know what kind of speeds those guys were flying?
Man, I don't know. That's a good question. It didn't seem like it was too crazy fast. You know what I mean?
But at this point, I think you probably built up a tolerance, or you were kind of relaxed, like with doing all those different scenarios. Were you wired in different positions, point where you're more comfortable, or you could last? Like, imagine after 45 minutes to an hour, you're feeling sore.
Yeah, I was pretty much just picked to my hips every time, and they would move Mickey around me, so she would get picked differently in certain things. Sometimes they wanted me to carry her, they called it the honeymoon position, just in my arms here. Other times they wanted her on my back like a backpack or this, that.
Did that balance out for you? Did that help you? Or you just have to grunt it out sometimes?
Sometimes you got to grunt it out. Both times we would do hang tests before we would go up. So we'd hook up, helicopter would hover, and just pull us off the ground 5 feet.
Just to get a feel for it.
Get a feel, make sure you're harnessed in the right spot, things that aren't in the way, shouldn't be in the way. Get comfortable somewhat, then thumbs up, and then up we would go.
Nice.
We'd always make sure everyone's comfy, nothing's pinching, nothing's snagging, so we could just concentrate on what we had to do.
And be more comfortable with it. What kind of a harness were you using?
I used a Climbing Sutra full spectra.
Okay. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about harnesses, something that I think the average person's not aware of?
Harnesses are amazing. I only have 2 experiences with harness. My first one ever was an Am-Spec. And I don't know what they make them. I think they may be all nylon.
Yeah.
Years ago, we came across a company called Climbing Sutra, who primarily makes harnesses for the Vegas circus performers. Those things get a lot of abuse in Vegas.
Are they lighter? Or they just hold up? The stitching? I remember talking to Will about this. This is actually an interesting point. He goes, I get in the habit of never boring somebody else's harnesses. You don't know if that's been sitting in the back of a pickup.
Yeah.
It gets hot and the stitching starts giving away and you're up there 1,500 feet. No, thank you.
Yeah, that was for sure. I made sure I had a brand new one for when we did that work. They say to replace them every year.
Really?
Is what Climbing Sutra says. I believe it's every year. But those are also the Vegas people who are doing shows every day.
Right.
This is my story about why I have my harness.
Okay.
A show called Red Dawn. We may have talked about this before.
Yeah. Oh, we
were doing the building,
right?
yes,
Okay.
We were doing the building jump, and director wanted the Bourne shot where the cameraman follows the guy out of the window.
Yeah.
Guy named Scott Rogers. I jumped out the window. Scott followed me. I made it to the other building. Scott didn't on purpose. He just wanted to kind of trail me, and then Scott fell between the 2 buildings.
Uh-huh.
We were over 100 feet in the air, something like that. And I remember him coming to kind of an abrupt stop when he got to his point, his mark, And he did it a few times, whatever. And to me, that was more gnarly than what I did. Because he wasn't making it to the other side. He was just going right in the middle just to get this shot. As soon as we were done, I made sure I knew what harness he had on. Because that was the harness I was going to get. And that's what he had. For
sure. And the getting back to the Bourne sequence, isn't it one of the 8711 guys that actually was chasing after Matt Damon's double? Is it Chad? And who's the other fella? Who's the 2 main guys?
There's Chad and Dave.
Dave. Is Dave the guy following?
I think Dave might have been. I'm not sure. I think Dave might have been doubling Matt as he went through the window.
Oh, I gotcha.
I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Because I looked at the behind the scenes, but you couldn't see who exactly was the guy that was jumping. I mean, that's an epic shot now.
Epic.
It's just, where do you go from the word epic?
Yeah. They did that same deal, and man, I remember I saw Scott just come down. He was hanging there in between 2 buildings, just cool customer. And I was like, what harness do you have on again? Oh yeah, I'm going to get that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Obviously you've worked on, we're going to talk about some of the films that you've done recently, but if there's 1 or 2 people that have just impressed you, you just look at them and go, that dude is just awesome. Is there a couple of people that kind of stand out for you on that?
There's a lot of people that really like that. Yeah, to me. Coordinating wise, performing wise.
Yeah.
All the above.
Yeah, I mean, just like, you're just something, wow, that just was impressive. I mean, like for me, when I was seeing some Circus du Soleil type of guys, and I'm like, and then I've seen stunt guys, and I've seen parkour guys, and what their skill sets are, it's just amazing what these guys can actually do. And gals, too, I shouldn't.
The first thing, top of my head, just because I was just there, Captain America, a guy named Sam Hargrave.
Okay.
Impressive individual. He is the double for Captain America.
Right. Does he live here in Manhattan Beach? Because I know Captain America lives in Manhattan Beach.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Sam, I'm not sure. I think he's in Malibu now.
Okay.
Anyways.
His pay went up a little bit higher.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I was just there. I just watched him work. And he's also coordinating Captain America Civil War, which is a pretty daunting thing in itself. Plus, he's 1X. He's the lead double. I think he's handling most of the choreography. Him and another guy, James Young, are handling the action design. You know, if you saw Winter Soldier, that's one of my all-time favorites already, just in terms of how they shot it and what the action looked like.
We talked about this, actually. I looked at this particular type of movie, and he says, why don't you check out this? And you're right. It was exciting to watch, the angles that he had.
Yeah.
The fight sequence, the action design, I'd have to agree with you, because I'm not a big superhero guy, but they were just done well, that I enjoyed it as a fight sequence.
I think what Sam and James have brought to that movie, or now into that world now into Marvel, is, yes, it's superhero stuff, but it's still grounded.
Right.
And it keeps you on the edge, because you're not just watching a CG character fly around. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all, but you know.
But it's real, man.
They're actually doing these things, yes. They're shooting real guns, they're blowing stuff up, they're hitting the ground hard. These two guys, when Winter Soldier fought Captain America in that one knife fight they had, I mean, they are ratcheting guys into trucks, and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I think that blend, whatever they have there,
combination.
That combo is, to me, I like watching that type of stuff.
Wasn't Captain America that won the best rigging?
It was, yeah.
That was phenomenal.
Yeah. Did some really nice stuff there. But, you know, even with the rigging, it's still a guy on a wire doing that stuff.
Sure.
For real. You know, and I think whenever we get into this conversation about CG and actually doing things, I think the human's eye, or whoever, is still pulled into seeing things done for real. The physics is very natural. Yeah, exactly. Which was the reason why the Wachowskis, going back to Jupiter, wanted to see two people hanging from a helicopter, because the eye knows when it's not seeing, you know, real things happen. People still like that, thankfully. I got to tell you something. I kind of, even though I'm cinematography and stunts, I'll look in other areas. And I remember coming across this convention, and it's like anything else. Everyone brings stuff to Hollywood, whatever it might be. It was just like the thing with drones. A lot of these things were on the basis of solar panels and monitoring. They've come now it's an actual tool. Same thing with graphics. So I looked at all these guys doing car stuff on graphics, and I was like, no. And it was just the physics. However, there was one. The only difference is, and I've talked to Garrett about this, because he's an amazing resource for this. I asked him, how long did it take you to do this? Not Garrett, but the guy to do this particular cars sequence. And it says, it took like 48 hours. And I'm like, okay, we're still ahead of the curve. I asked, Garrett to do something like that. So I can do that in 2 hours. So there's the physics aspect of it, but you know that you're kind of chasing time a little bit. A little bit. Yeah. But I think that I like what you're saying about Winter Soldier, because it brings back the reality. It's grounded. It's exciting. And then there gets to the sense when it's all superhero shit. And it's like, well, what's real now? Right. Which, in something like Superman, the last Man of Steel. Okay. I thought they did a really good job blending the two. When he flies, he's CG. When he's on the ground, it's Henry. And Henry did do a lot of good fight stuff in there. And then, of course, he flies around the air. It's CG. Is Henry doing a lot of his own stunts? I'm pretty sure it was him doing some of that fight work in there. Stunt-wise, I'm not sure. I didn't work on it. Right. Obviously athletic. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. But I thought they did a nice job blending the two on that. Nice. No, those are good examples. And, you mentioned earlier about, where do you go from here, and you're happy performing. Why don't you tell, like you just said, you just came back from... Actually, that was kind of a nice thing. You came back from Captain America to go for the Taurus Awards. That's kind of a nice thing. Did it work out to be that way? Just somehow worked out. The stars aligned. I don't know how. Nice. Yeah. Nice. And then also you recently worked on American Sniper. Yep. What was that experience like? That was a pretty amazing experience as well. My stuff was in Morocco. They were using Morocco to double as Fallujah. Right. Muslim country, whatnot. I mean, it's Clint Eastwood. I don't know. It's insane. I don't know. The words don't really describe. This is something a guy you've grown up watching and idolizing.
Do you have a personal story for the audience with Clint?
What did he said a couple things to me when we were there. I had to do this small sequence where we're in a Hummer, we do a crash, we bail out, get into a firefight. I pick up a briefcase of money, I throw it in another car and back out. That was my whole deal on that. First of all, I don't know how old he is now, but every day at Rap, he would go right to the gym after shooting however many hours it was. He's always got an awesome attitude, cracking jokes. It's super relaxed setting. It's just a dream to work on.
Sure. I know through people, I mentioned I spoke to the camera operator and I said, you're in good hands with Antal. And he actually responded, he goes, yeah, Antal was a pro. So that's, kudos to you again. But I know he's got his crew all dialed in. Did you find that was just an efficient process he had?
That was probably one of the most efficient crews I've ever worked on. And people had spent some time together. Yeah, it was a well-oiled machine for sure.
Things don't need to be said. You just know at that point.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Actually, that's a great point now that I want to bring to our attention about guys doing stunts with people that you're used to or worked with many times. Now with you, I know what to expect. Jeremy, Dusty. And I think the one thing that I found with you, Antal, is that you're really confident. I mean, you've worked at it. It's not because you're cocky. It's confident because, I can do it because I train, I work hard at it. What could you say about working with crews that maybe you haven't worked with regularly?
It's just a feeling out process. To me, I just go into every job with a mindset that I'm just going to be open, because you never get the same, even if it's the same production company, what have you. There's always different variables to it, different cogs in the machine. I just try to go in with an open mind, and I try to feel out their process and the way that they work things and run things. And I just try to mold myself into that in a sense.
Perfect. And one of the things that one of the things I learned from you is about keeping my mouth shut.
Yeah.
I've worked with some big time guys and I have some questions and sometimes I had some statements, and then I work with Antal where he doesn't say that much, and then that's when you finally he goes, sometimes it's just best to keep your mouth shut unless they ask you a question.
Sometimes. I mean,
if it's something dangerous, you need to speak up.
Yeah, for sure. It's just feeling out that situation. Sometimes, and I'm guilty of this probably more than anybody. When I was newer, I would ask a lot of stupid questions, or I didn't think they were at the time, but looking back, I was like, sure, I didn't need to ask that dumbass question. But you just kind of, as you go, you learn how things kind of work. But yeah, usually the questions get answered before I ask them. Yeah. In a sense.
But you're obviously paying attention.
Yeah. Like if I have a question about how this is supposed to look or how this is supposed to happen, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I wait a minute before I ask, and then it reveals itself, or, something like that.
So it's almost like a patience skill.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, it's kind of funny, like you said, you don't really say that much, but I remember one time I was doing something and I was hanging outside the window and you looked at me and go, oh, I don't know, Ribeiro. I know that's sort of your style. You like to use the last names, and then I said, oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And you just kind of shook your head. And of course, I'll live with it. But, there gets to a point where you need to say something but doesn't look right based maybe on my own experience. Like, obviously, I'm not a stunt guy, but obviously I felt I was that day. And it worked out okay. But where do I go from here on this? Why don't you tell us about stunt doubling, like Channing, Chris? Is there another fellow that you double regularly?
David Boreanaz sometimes on TV show Bones.
Okay.
Although I don't know if they're coming back or not. I'm not sure.
You've also done a lot on Agents of...
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I've done a few episodes. But I doubled a guy. His name is Brian Wade.
Okay.
Big bodybuilder dude. We only did 2 episodes together in that. But I doubled him on another TV show called Teen Wolf.
Okay.
As well.
So how do you... I know with like Garrett, he's so fast. So like, here's the actor, and you bring the stunt person. He's like, he'll switch. And he's like really quick. But with you as doubling somebody else, do you have like a better relationship? Do you ever have like a little talk to each other?
Yes, sometimes. It's always different. The scenario is always different. Like with Channing, for example, after we did Jupiter, I went and did 22 with him. So now we have already a relationship, and we discussed things before, and I ask him how much of this he wants to do. Like, for example, we're getting ready to do whatever gag, hanging off a truck or jumping on this, whatever. I'll go to him a few days before, after we rehearse it and blah, 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 and I'll be like, hey, this is what it is. or if it's a fight or whatever, I'll show him the previs. Here's what it is. What do you think? And he'll usually tell me, yeah, that's cool, let's do it. Or, sometimes he'll be like, my knee's a little bit tweaked today. Why don't you do this section of it or whatever? You know what I mean?
That's really
so it's
cool.
Just getting in and picking their brain. Or if it's somebody I never met, if I'm working just for a day with them or whatever, I'll show up in the morning. I'll make sure I find them, introduce myself to them.
Yeah.
And just let them know I'm here for them. I have whatever they need. Anything they want, just tell me. We'll make it happen. And just try to make them feel comfortable, because some actors aren't used to having a stunt double. Some are. There's always a give and take that you have to feel out with that person,
Oh, that sounds like really professional. I'm sure Channing appreciates that.
Yeah.
He's given that opportunity to get a little bit of glory, but on the same token, he knows he might hurt himself. And you kind of have a responsibility. If that guy gets hurt, that movie's over.
Yeah, exactly. So and with him, people like Channing or Chris or any of these people, these guys that do a lot of action, they love doing it themselves as well. So I just facilitate that. However much they want to do, it's up to them. I never try to step in and be like, oh, this isn't for you, bro. This is for the stunt guy, blah, blah. Never do that. And I just, whatever they want, I'm working for them.
Listen to this, folks. There's a reason why Antal's working all the time.
Yeah.
Come on. It was just, I have to chase you around a little bit because I got to go out of town. I got to do this. I'm gone for a few weeks. I'm like, well, the hard work is paid off. And that's another part. 2 years ago, maybe 3, when you were helping me out, and obviously you still help me out. You helped me out on a project last year. It's, even though you're getting these projects and they're big projects, you're still staying in there, staying sharp, doing whatever you need to do. And it's like, I want people to sort of realize that, there might be a time where maybe you don't need to do it or don't want to do it. But at this level, you're still out there helping your buddies.
Yeah, that whole thing equates to me, in a sense, I guess this is cliche as well, but don't forget what got you to this point. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if I lighten up or loosen up a little bit, it takes my edge away, in a sense. It takes an edge off of me. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's helping somebody with a free thing, doing a previs, whatever the case. We just did one of those the other day. It was a total freebie. And you still go and you learn new things, and there's always new lingo or new camera moves or new this or this new kick or something or whatever, you know what I mean? And
so staying in the game.
Exactly, staying in the game and trying to keep that edge.
Speaking about the edge, obviously you got to stay in shape and be ready. When you're on the set, suppose you were in Morocco and you weren't working long hours or days, are you hitting the gym? Are you doing other things?
Oh yeah.
Does your routine change?
The routine changes, which is another reason why I change it here a lot as well, is because when you go somewhere, you don't know what you have access to. So you can't, when we were in Morocco, the hotel was a very strange gym, had some weird ass contraptions, but we all just kind of figured out something to do that would give us kind of a nice little circuit each day when we get in there, and just try to keep it together in a sense, I guess. There's
something you just said there that I haven't really discussed that much, but it's something that's really true in the stunt community. There's a bonding. It's he's your brother, and you're going to the gym, you're going to hang out, you're going to have a good time. What's your thought process on that? You're going to battle and these are your buddies? How do you think this over?
It's part of it. It's definitely, sometimes you're going into battle with your buddies. Other times, these are just people that look out for you, and I look out for them. And I guess once you've crossed a certain point with somebody, in terms of, I don't know, maybe doing something dangerous, you've gone that distance with this person.
Yeah.
It just kind of creates a bond, between these people. And, or other guys that come from similar backgrounds that you have a kinship or connection, with these guys, knowing, hey, we kind of went through the same thing together, and that's kind of cool. Or, the guys that were rigging on Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
This is a show that I was in wires almost every day, and we were doing some, hairy stuff most of the time. These guys I hold in the highest respect. These are the guys that hooked me into a freaking helicopter that took me up in the air, and I survived, and I never got a scratch on me, actually, the entire process. So these guys now I have a big respect for.
Hell yeah.
So stuff like that builds those relationships, I guess. Other times, it is you're going into battle. Sometimes these shows are a battle, with certain other departments or whatever the case may be. So sometimes you need to stick together and do your thing.
Sure. I first heard this term from Andy, I guess a couple years ago, refers to stunt people as soldiers, and it was like, yeah. I mean, look what you're describing. You're going to battle. You're going to get some bruises and break some bones. Not necessarily with you on that particular project, but it does happen, and it has happened, and it will continue to happen. It's just part of the business that you can't avoid it.
Yeah, definitely.
But you guys knowing that going in, I think.
The soldier mentality for sure. Definitely some shows more than others. You know, you have to be that guy that's going to just be like, let's just get this done. Yes, sir. Let's do it. You know,
you have obviously a lot of familiarity with different stunt coordinators. Would you prepare a little bit differently with certain ones?
No, I mean,
I guess now in your career is a little bit different because they know what they're getting.
Yeah.
But maybe like 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, would that be a little bit different?
You know, no, I don't think so. My getting prepared was always kind of, because you never know what, if it's a new person, you don't know who he is or how he is or what he's going to ask of you or expect from you and this and that. So, you know, just trying to be on top of your game when you go in.
In other words, do the best you can, but do you ever do research on some of these coordinators?
Yeah, sometimes I'll look them up and see what they've done, and more than anything, it's just I look at the previous stuff just to see how they like doing certain things.
Yeah.
So I can try to get a little bit of a idea.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm going in. So and so did this movie and they shot it this way, and they like to use practical explosions as opposed to doing stuff on green, or they like to do this and that. You know, I guess more than anything.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
What was it like being in Britain and working with the Brits?
It was, I don't know, it was a little bit tough. They have some awesome people there, but there's always that, not always, I felt like when we were there was a little bit of headbutting going on. It's two different tribes.
The Americans and the Brits?
Yeah, coming together. We found a way to make it all work, and it was fine.
Did it involve alcohol?
What's that?
Did it involve alcohol?
Oh yeah, it always does. Yeah. You know, it's just going into someone else's territory. Sure. In a sense, a whole team of us, you know, going into their world.
Yeah.
And
their backyard.
No one's to blame for it. It's just two tribes getting forced together. Hey, here it is. We need to make all this work, and none of us have really worked together before, but blah, blah, blah. There's always going to be a little bit of that.
There's also a little bit of testosterone involved.
Oh, there's fucking testosterone flying around, and there's all kinds of shit going on. So. But it was good, man. It was a good experience.
Did the actual overall mechanics, did it change a little bit? Because I know, like, you look at the credits in some of these British movies and guys are separate for this particular action. So were you dealing with more people? Was the process a little bit different than what would be working here in LA?
Process was, it's pretty similar what they were doing there. I think they have a thing called the match. Basically, if you go in another country, if you go into Canada, and you're a U.S. coordinator or whatever, they like to have a match. The Canadian match is also a Canadian stunt coordinator. If we go to England, they need to have an English stunt coordinator as well as the American. But their English match over there was, you know, this guy's a world-traveled guy and worked on all kinds of big shows. And
so that's all kind of gone?
Yeah, he's seen it from A to Z, and, you know, his process is pretty streamlined as well. And
who was that?
His name is Ben Cook.
Okay.
And he's done all kinds of...
Total pro?
Yeah. He's doubled James Bond and Statham for a few movies and this and that.
Sounds like he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing, for sure. So
excellent, man.
Yeah.
Was there a movie recently or a show that you were really excited about, that you did, something that you personally were really proud of? I
honestly was stoked to get the call to go to Captain America.
Nice.
It's one of those things I've always wanted to do.
Because obviously the second one you think is one of the best things ever.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's nice.
Yeah. Plus, I like the direction that these two directors, the Russo brothers, are taking this character now, this franchise, what have you. So I was really stoked to get that call and go out there.
Actually, where do you see this happening in the next 5 years? Are we going to be on the superhero treadmill now?
Man, this is tough. I want to say that we're going to continue on for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say right now.
I mean, a lot of times, you know, with Andy setting up the Marvel tour, and it's also to make a lot of money in merchandising as well.
I mean, the movies are basically just commercials for the toys. That's all. They're just big commercials.
Just a big machine.
The toys make the money. Yeah. I hope it does for a while. I mean, it's great for our community. Sure. You know, there's a lot. He's putting a lot of guys to work. A lot of people to work in general. All departments and the whole industry.
How many stunt guys were there, you think, in general?
There's a lot.
Hundreds?
You mean on that show?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not hundreds. There's maybe 50, 60 at that time. But then, guys come in and out and rotate and blah, blah, blah. Maybe 40, I don't know, somewhere in there.
I mean, these big tentpole movies, these $100, $200 million movies, you got 50 guys there, another 50 guys somewhere else. Is this the best of the best? I know you'll be modest in that whole thing again, but
I'll tell you what, this crew that Sam had on Captain America Civil War was one of the most top-notch crews I've come across in terms of just, absolutely.
if I say something, I mean, from a director's point of view, if I imagine something, these are the guys that could just execute it with the least amount of effort.
These are those guys. And there's other groups that are like that as well. Haberstad's crew and Prescott's and all those guys. But it was the performers as well that Sam had there were some pretty awesome performers. Yeah.
Actually, you brought up Jeff Haberstad and bringing all you guys over to Atlanta. Did that work out okay, the way that kind of transpired?
I think it did. I know they were really happy with what they got. In terms of, you mean Ant-Man? Talking about Ant-Man, yeah. I know the producers were happy with what they got. Jeff has his deal. This is what is part of his deal,
And let's kind of discuss this. What I think Antal means there is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the guys that you're bringing. You know what they can do. I guess if you hop into a town and you don't know the skill set, you have these variables that you talk about.
Sure.
So if you're trying to do a budget, trying to do a movie, you've got those elements that are kind of like, I don't really know. But if I'm bringing Antal, I'm bringing this guy, I know what I'm getting. There's no surprises.
Yeah. That was, I'm sure, a big part of that, the reason he was able to bring a lot of guys out there. And I'm hoping that, the trend continues. For the Marvel people seem to be pretty open to it. They definitely have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I know Sam was able to bring in quite a few guys and stuff as well. So
nice.
Hopefully it continues on.
Very, very cool. I guess we're going to cap this off here, but I wanted to kind of ask you, because you're in the trenches. You're right in there. Where do you see the future of action going in the next 5+ years, I think?
Future of action. The minute we think that we're on to the next big thing, there's always something that comes out that's old school that pulls us right back to where it all began.
Nice.
And the reason why we love seeing something like Bullet or whatever the case, you know what I mean? That's real stuff.
Right.
It's hard to say, man. I mean, in terms of fight stuff, I feel like where some of the video games are at now and how they're able to move that camera, punch into things, punch out in the way they do, I feel like those things are on the cusp right now of being able to shoot a fight in that way where there's, I don't know what type of rig or whatever they're going to be coming up with. I feel like fight choreography and stuff like that may be headed that direction.
I'll tell you something that came up in conversation with some DPs last week, and these are some old school guys where they get kind of bent out of shape, and I think that's rightly so. And they did this sequence, and the director says to the DP, goes, "Oh, we'll compose it in post." He's like, "Does that mean?" Because the cameras are going to 5, 6K, 8K, they're just taking pockets out and now putting that into the edit.
Oh, yeah.
So it's obviously the DPs are making us think about that, and I think rightly so. In terms of the action design, if there's a fight sequence, I mean, this is something that I've had with previs and fight coordinators. The stunt guys, when it comes to previs, they're pretty flexible, no pun intended. You're there to go get this shit done, and that's that. But if they're like to say, well, we need to have this camera angle and we need to have this punch, I'm like, no, that's not the way it's going to work. And I can say this on here, that you don't know if the fight coordinator is going to bring in a certain type of fighter. It could be one of these slick Asian guys. It could be like a barroom brawl. You don't know if you have a background of Kali. You don't know if he's going to use this type of martial arts. There's so many variables, and that's what makes it exciting. Mm-hmm. Just like when I gave you that story, what I had in mind with you and Jake, you came up with these moves, and I loved it. And I think, okay, let's just have this. And I loved it. Mm-hmm. I still enjoy that piece. I'm not sure how you feel about it, but then
when you like it.
Yeah. And again, we talked about other fights and other movies, and then when you brought my attention to Captain America, I just thought, you're on it. But in terms of the technology, and I also kind of get the idea, like like JJ Perry stuff. I can see when it's JJ Perry. Like, it's so raw.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, like you kind of cover your eyes a couple of times because
Yeah.
it's kind of really badass.
Yeah.
And there's something about it, and that's very real.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yes, it is. Is there anything you'd like to share or say at the very end, maybe for up-and-coming people or just in general to cap off this great interview?
Shit. I don't know.
That's okay. Well, that's totally okay, Antal. Your actions speak louder than your words, and we're lucky to have you here.
That's it. Let your actions speak louder than your words.
Yeah, and I mean, he's doing a great job. He's one of the hottest tickets in town, and we're glad to have you here, Antal.
Thanks, Lawrence. Appreciate it, man.
All right, brother.